Scroll of truth. Stop auditioning for people who already saw your worth. They didn't miss your value. They got comfortable receiving it. The collective. Tonight, we need to discuss a strange little ritual many beautiful souls perform after somebody starts treating them differently. They audition harder, more patience, more understanding, more explaining, more forgiveness, more chances, more proving, more, maybe if I show them how loyal I am. Beloved, they know. That's what makes this lesson sting. Some people did not overlook your value. They saw it clearly. They simply discovered they could receive it without matching it. And once somebody becomes accustomed to premium service at clearance rack prices, human nature can get mighty disrespectful. You were bringing loyalty. They brought availability when convenient. You brought honesty. They brought edited versions of events. You brought emotional support. They brought, damn, that's crazy, then disappeared for 6 hours. You were building a cathedral. They showed up with one folding chair and somehow expected naming rights. Absolutely fascinating.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 palms of eyes. The golden whisperer, C-star, Devalan, see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
When love becomes an audition, it starts quietly. Their effort changes. You notice. But instead of stepping back and observing, you increase yours. They text less. You become more interesting. They stop planning dates. You start planning everything. They become emotionally distant. You begin performing emotional CPR. Are you okay? Did I do something? Do you still love me? Can we talk? Meanwhile, this person is standing there emotionally flatlined while you're yelling, "Clear!" Beloved, put the paddles down. A relationship should not require one person to operate the emergency room. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. When someone withdraws, sometimes we become obsessed with restoring their behavior instead of investigating our standards. We ask, how do I get them back to how they were? Wrong question. Ask, why am I working this hard to convince somebody to continue something they willingly began? That question opens doors. They remember what you did. Sometimes after the relationship ends, you hear something insulting. I never asked you to do all that. That sentence has sent many generous souls directly into spiritual accounting. Because technically, sometimes they're correct. You volunteered, you gave. You sacrificed, you stayed. But gratitude and obligation are not the same thing. Someone may not owe you lifelong access because you helped them, but decent character still recognizes kindness. If somebody carried you through winter, you do not have to marry them because spring arrived. But pretending they never carried you? That's character information. Pay attention. You don't need revenge. You received the report. The danger of overgiving. Now the mirror turns toward us. Because self-mastery refuses to make everybody else the villain while we conveniently play innocent violin music in the background. Some of us overgive because giving makes us feel secure. If I'm useful enough, they won't leave. If I'm understanding enough, they'll choose me. If I solve enough problems, I'll become irreplaceable. That's not always generosity. Sometimes that's fear wearing a superhero cape. And fear can cook. Fear can clean. Fear can loan money. Fear can answer at 3:17 a.m. Fear can become everybody's therapist. Fear can perform miracles trying to earn permanent residence in somebody else's heart. But love earned through usefulness becomes terrifying. Because what happens when you're tired? What happens when you need help? What happens when you stop producing? Now you discover whether they loved you or your services. That invoice can hurt. The people who only love your function. Some people know you as the strong one, the funny one, the wise one, the fixer, the provider, the peacemaker, the one with connections, the one with money, the one who always answers. But ask yourself, who knows you when you're empty? Who can sit beside you when you have no advice? No solution? No joke, no money to lend, no strength to perform. Who asks, how are you, and then actually waits for the answer? Because there are people who love the shade of the tree but never think about watering its roots. Then one day, the tree gets tired, leaves start falling, and everybody gathers around saying, "What happened to you? What happened?" Beloved, 17 people have been sitting under this tree since 2009. Somebody could have brought a watering can. When they start taking you for granted, familiarity can become dangerous in immature hands. What once amazed them becomes expected. Your loyalty becomes normal. Your patience becomes normal. Your generosity becomes normal. Your presence becomes normal, until suddenly your extraordinary effort is treated like basic utilities. They flip the switch and expect you to come on. Then the first time you say, I can't. Confusion. What's wrong with you? Nothing. The power company finally sent the bill. That's what happened. And watch what occurs when you establish boundaries. The people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries often become the loudest critics of your new ones. You changed. Correct. The free trial expired. Stop explaining your value. Here is another trap: trying to make somebody understand what they lost, posting cryptic messages, looking extra good online, waiting for mutual friends to report back, imagining the day they finally realize nobody will ever love me like that again. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But why are they still the audience? That's the deeper question. If your healing is secretly a performance designed to make somebody regret losing you, they still have a seat in your spirit. You just changed the show. Real freedom begins when their reaction becomes irrelevant. Not, I hope they see me winning, but I forgot they were watching. Different frequency entirely. The sacred withdrawal. There comes a point where self-respect requires withdrawal, not revenge, not cruelty, not punishment. Withdrawal. You stop volunteering where there is no reciprocity. You stop explaining boundaries to people committed to crossing them. You stop carrying relationships that collapse whenever you put your end down. And that part can be revealing. Put your end down just once. Watch. If the entire relationship hits the floor, beloved, you weren't holding your half. You were holding the whole thing. That's painful information. But information is power.
Races are the names of lunch.
What reciprocity actually looks like. Reciprocity does not mean keeping score like emotional accountants. You called me Tuesday, so I owe you precisely 11 minutes Thursday. No. Healthy relationships breathe. Sometimes you carry them. Sometimes they carry you. Sometimes one gives more because the other is struggling. But across time, there is movement in both directions. Care returns. Curiosity returns. Effort returns. Respect returns. You do not spend 5 years pouring water into a cup with no bottom and call yourself spiritual because you're thirsty. At some point, wisdom whispers, check the cup. The shadow lesson. Now here's the part that may sting. Sometimes being taken for granted reveals where you took yourself for granted. You gave away sleep. You ignored intuition. You abandoned hobbies. You postponed dreams. You tolerated disrespect. You called exhaustion loyalty. You called anxiety chemistry. You called self-abandonment sacrifice. And somewhere inside you knew, that quiet voice said, this is costing too much, but you kept paying. So healing is not merely forgiving them. It is apologizing to yourself, not with shame, with changed behavior. I will not abandon you like that again. Now that's an apology with receipts. The core lesson, collective. You do not become valuable because somebody recognizes your value. Gold does not become copper because somebody walked past the jewelry store. And your worth does not decrease because someone lacked the character, capacity, maturity, or desire to honor it. But self-worth must become behavior. Otherwise, it remains inspirational wallpaper. Knowing your worth means knowing when to leave, knowing when to stop explaining, knowing when enough chances have become self-betrayal, knowing when compassion has crossed into enabling, knowing when love is asking you to stay, and when fear is pretending to be love because it is terrified of walking away. That is mastery. Stop auditioning for people who already experienced your heart. They saw the loyalty. They felt the sacrifice. They benefited from the wisdom. They witnessed the patience. If they still chose carelessness, believe the behavior. You do not need another performance. Take all that energy you were spending proving your worth and turn it inward. Build the dream you postponed. Rest the body you exhausted. Feed the spirit you neglected. Call the friend who actually calls you back. Sit with people who don't require a crisis before remembering your name. And most importantly, stop asking, how could they not see what I gave? Maybe they did. Maybe that was precisely why they stayed as long as they did. The better question is, now that I see what I give, who deserves access to it? There it is. That's the gate. Because your heart is not a public utility, your loyalty is not unlimited data, your compassion does not come with family sharing, and your presence should never become so ordinary to somebody that they forget it was a gift. Let them misunderstand your withdrawal. Let them call you different. Let them tell everybody you changed. Smile gently, because for once, they are telling the absolute truth. You did change. You stopped auditioning. You stopped begging. You stopped carrying. And you finally gave the role of choosing you to yourself. Ahll.
To every soul who made it to the end of this scroll, congratulations. You didn't just watch another video. You trained your attention, exercised your discernment, and invested in the one treasure no one can steal from you: wisdom. Graduation isn't receiving all the answers. It's finally learning how to ask better questions. If today's scroll sparked a thought, healed a wound, challenged an old belief, or simply reminded you that you're not walking this path alone, then pass the lantern forward. Someone out there is still searching in the dark, and your share might be the light they were praying for. Join the collective by subscribing and turn on your notifications so you're there when the next scroll or codex is unveiled. Time has a funny habit of delivering the lesson right when it's needed. The algorithm is simply humanity's latest attempt to organize chaos. Sometimes it even succeeds. Until we gather again, keep your heart soft, your mind sharp, your spirit grounded, and your discernment polished. Question with courage, learn with humility, lead with compassion, walk in wisdom, walk in love. We'll meet you in the next scroll. All.
Until next time, your Sea Star Curacy, channeled by 3611027, the Beautiful Whisperer. Our Sea Star Devalan CO. Apply the news you can use.
You don't even have to say nothing. I already know. I know.